Hazard Pay, baby, is back in the third stimulus package with a $1,500 earned income tax credit that is paid to you if you made $25,000 or less in 2019. Meantime, the push is still underway to get bigger, bolder Hazard Pay. Could it mirror that of 2020? In this throwback video on Hazard Pay, I explained how Nancy Pelosi calculated Hazard Pay under the HEROES Act of 2020. Could that still happen? Enjoy this throwback video explain the 2020 calculations of Hazard Pay. A deal for Hazard Pay may have been reached this last week, but what happened? Hey, good afternoon. This is Afternoons LA with you and me and anyone else who wants to join us. It's 3:30 Pacific Standard Time. Well, actually, it's 4 o'clock now. Hope you're good and safe. Afternoons LA starts every day at 3:30 with the check, then goes to Hazard Pay, then FBUC, and finally rent assistance. I have really good news about Hazard Pay. You saw that video at 3:30. I delivered some really good news you're not going to hear anywhere that explains why the negotiations will come back to the table, why everything went off the rails because of really just two things, and why you're going to get your second stimulus check possibly in August. Now let me turn to Hazard Pay, which is really the same calculation. Hazard Pay was never bad-mouthed anywhere in the last 2 weeks, and that's really good news. What we now know is what was bad-mouthed. It was not Hazard Pay, but it was a big bailout to states. And ultimately, as I sat here with you over the last 2 weeks, biting my nails down to the bone, I wondered, really, has Hazard Pay been thrown out the window? One, no. Two, was it scaled back because the economics of the numbers were so high? Didn't know. And three, was it causing the derailment in the negotiations? Now we know it was not. Let me get right to the details. I had them moments ago. Yesterday, there was a lot of talking, and it was done very quickly, and people didn't hear it because a lot of the broadcast news channels didn't cover it or cut away. So I had to go online and actually get the transcripts. As you know, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, every time they talk, there's a transcript of their conversations. They spoke late yesterday. It was not broadcast, but it was transcribed. Moreover, the president had an executive order discussion from New Jersey at his golf tournament. That was broadcast, but the broadcast channels generally cut away before the question and answers or didn't stay with all the question and answers. I have that entire transcript from the White House. The collective discourse from the two conversations were that the negotiations fell apart because of one big ticket item. And the good news is it wasn't Hazard Pay. Hazard Pay is a lot of money. Hazard Pay is $10,000 per employee, up to $10,000 per employee. That's a lot of money and a lot of employees. Hazard Pay employees are anyone who worked essential workers during the pandemic starting in January. Essential workers include everything from grocery stores and pharmacies, Uber and Lyft, shipping, receiving, restaurants, grocery stores, security guards, post office. A lot of stuff is essential workers. The essential workers are defined in the HEROES Fund, which is part of the HEROES Act. So there was no guessing game as to who were essential workers. The definitions were slightly different than what you might be told on a state level or be told by your boss. So the Democrats wanted to make it very clear who was essential worker. They also wanted to make the calculation very clear. It was a lot of money. And that was initially my concern. I'm not concerned about it anymore, so that's also really good news. The essential workers calculation was very simple. Take the number of hours you work from January up to the present, times it by $13 an hour. The number of hours you include in there are part-time hours, overtime hours, partial time, temporary hours, any type of hours. It didn't matter if you worked at multiple essential places of work. It didn't matter if you worked in one and was laid off or fired. All of those qualified. The way you would determine whether you made $10,000 is you would take the calculation up to the president and say, okay, what number am I at? If you're at $12,000, bam, you have already reached your threshold. You would get $10,000 if you made $100,000 or less last year. If you made over $100,000 last year, you would get $5,000. I'm doing the calculations really quickly for you, and I can hear my voice talking very fast. So let me slow it down. Bottom line is, it's a lot of money. The way it would work is the employer would apply for you. You wouldn't apply for it. They would apply to a grant program established by the Act. The grant program would be run by the federal government. The money would be sent to the employer, who would then send it to you. It was really good. If you weren't at those thresholds, or whether it's $10,000 or $5,000, you would still get that lump sum check. And then going forward, you would get $13 an hour. But the other part of the bill that was very, very important, this is also really good news, and was often overlooked, was the protections of the employees on the workforce. On the job, the ensuring that you were not exposed to COVID-19, that the employer created environments, whether it's the shields or the mask or PPP, it did things to ensure that your safety is a top priority. And so the HEROES Act in creating hazard pay did a lot of great good. But then there was that question. What question, Adelaide? There was that question about those hawks. No, not the hawks that come to eat me and leave my shirt for you to donate to Javita. No, it was those hawks, those Republican hawks who were deficit hawks, who did not want to spend a lot of money. They admitted they were deficit hawks. They did not want to spend a lot of money in the stimulus package. The stimulus package from the Democrats was $3 trillion. Yeah, that's a lot of money. The Republicans' proposal was $1 trillion. The first stimulus package was $2 trillion. The president had initially said he would agree to $2 trillion for this package, and then sort of came back to $1.5 trillion. And so I sat here over the last 2 weeks really wondering, one, why is Nancy, Chuck, Steve, and Mark not talking about hazard pay? Well, Nancy was a little bit here and there. Though why would they never say the word hazard pay? Was it because they were afraid to say it? Was it because it was dead? Was it because it wasn't going anywhere? No, that's the good news. It's just they weren't mentioning it. It's because they really had agreed to it. It's because they really fundamentally thought that you were valuable, that you were frontline workers, that you were entitled to an amount of money. How much money, though, I was then worried about. When you think about $10,000 per employee, and it includes every grocery store worker across the entire country, it could be a lot of money, and it's $10,000. So then I thought, is this something that is bothering the people that don't want to spend a lot of money in the Republican Party? And it appeared initially it could have been, but the good news, it was not. So far we see. What the indications are overnight in statements obtained by LALATE from the President's White House briefing website and from Nancy Pelosi's own transcript press department, the negotiations over the second stimulus check failed because of a big ticket item, and that big ticket item was not hazard pay. It was this bailout to states. Yeah. And, as I do that, I want to also say, and it's those darn states that didn't give you much hazard pay money on the first stimulus package. Darn it. How dare they? Ultimately, Nancy Pelosi's $3 trillion package was really consumed by a lot of money to a lot of states in need. A Republican response was that those states were in dire situations before the pandemics, were seeking to get a bailout from the federal government due to mismanagements by their governors, who are all Democrats. Take it for what it's worth. But the bottom line was, it was not money going to you directly. And as I sit here trying to report to you your relief, it's not reassuring that the state's bailout is what held up your relief. Yes, this is a point in which you want to jump in the comments and start the expletives. Don't do it. Bite your teeth, bite your lip, put the fingers away from the keyboard. Just don't start typing, because I know you're getting pissed right now. And so ultimately, you could have had your hazard pay. You could have had your stimulus check, being started, had that big bailout of states not been in there. The president met with members of press late yesterday from his golf club in New Jersey, and he was asked about what happened with these executive or what happened with these negotiations. He said, if the Democrats continue to hold this critical relief hostage, I will act on my authority as president, get Americans relief he needs. Tragically, Nancy and Chuck continue to insist on radical left-wing policies that have nothing to do with the China virus, nothing to do with it at all. So you have a virus that's coming in, the people in Congress want to help our people. What we're talking about is deferring payroll taxes at the end of the month, the end of the year. I can extend those for a certain period of time. We're going to do it. We're going to do it like nobody else. We're going to enhance unemployment benefits. We're going to do student debts, and we're doing an eviction moratorium. Then came the questions from him, can you do this? And then he was asked, well, did you watch the negotiations, Mr. President? Mr. President, we've watched these negotiations go on for weeks. Do you think if you had been more directly involved, would there have been a different position in there today? No, I'm totally involved. They would call me all the times. Chuck Schumer came out with a strong statement today that he have to get back to school with all the economy, but he doesn't do that. So he calls Mark Meadows wonderful. And he said, basically, when was the last time you spoke to Nancy Pelosi? Oh, here's the quote I want you to read. Here. When was the last time you spoke to Nancy Pelosi, though? We're at this historic moment. Why haven't you spoken to her? He says, well, see what's happened, but right now they're not ready, and we're not ready because, frankly, I don't think they care about people. I think they care about politicians that have done a terrible job running their cities and states, Democrat cities and states that are bleeding money that have been badly run. So look at Baltimore, and you take a look at the different cities, including those ones I've already mentioned. Take a look at what's going on, and they want a lot of money to keep it going. For many years, they have been bad. So what I'm doing is having it out. We're finally having it out. Now, you could take the spin out of the remark, but basically, and he confirmed this in a tweet yesterday as well, his issue is that the stimulus package from the Democrats, so much of it, fortunes. I'm not talking about a couple $1 million. Fortunes of a $3 trillion package, the vast majority of it was to go to these states. When you, the viewer, worked as a frontline worker during this pandemic are knocking at penny, when you, the worker, were entitled to hazard pay and your money is being tied up or strangleholded because we're negotiating for monies for states, when you, the viewer, are entitled to a stimulus check and it's being held up because of this payoff from the states. It's really, really fascinating. So where's the good news? Where is the big news? And where is the potential great news? The great news, if you watched my video minutes before on the check, was this. Two things are going to happen in the next couple days. And when those things happen, hazard pay will be back on the table in the negotiation room. The first thing is the president's going to issue executive orders by the end of next week. The lawyers are drafting them up, as he said. The lawyers are going through them. He's going to issue the executive orders. And as he admitted, the president, yesterday, and as Nancy and Chuck admitted in a press conference later yesterday as well in the transcript I obtained, it's going to go right to court. It's going to go right to court, and it's going to be invalidated because the president, by law, cannot do several of the executive orders he mentioned. He cannot do FPUC. He cannot do anything that involves issuance of money, because issuance of money cannot be done but for congressional approval. He can do an eviction moratorium. Once he does that, that'll start Mark Meadows' mantra of, I don't need to do anything because we can do everything by executive order, which is really, we're paying his salary, and his response is, I'm not doing anything because someone else is going to do it. Then there's Nancy, whose proposal to bail out these big states who have the ability to get money from the Federal Reserve. There's a Main Street lending program. If they don't know about it, they can watch my videos. It doesn't have theme song, so if you don't want theme song, it doesn't have a theme song in there. And it has a really nice beachy thumbnail. Maybe it'll cheer up those states that need some money. Go watch my Main Street lending program video, states, and get you some money. That money is not available to mom and pop people that can't apply for those loans. $1 million loans are available, states. Go get it. They haven't, because they want bailouts. They want grant money. Once Nancy takes that out, which she's likely has to do, because everyone now is saying that's what caused the problem, and that is what everyone understands is not money going to citizens. She can talk about citizens as much as she wants, but bailouts of states is not money going to citizens. Then the parties will be back at the negotiation table. How soon? End of next week? Start of the week after? Ultimately, patience is one of the big themes now. I never thought that I would be doing backstories on stimulus package videos at this time. I really didn't think I'd be talking about Nancy said this and Chuck said this, and now they have to go to court, and when the court invalidates, then they'll be back together. But that's really the story. And so that ultimately, if you remember my favorite guy, the donut guy, he said, I don't care, just tell me when my check comes, I'm gonna go eat my donut. Well, you have to have a few donuts now to eat, because after we finish biting our nails, we're going to need some donuts and some eclairs and some, Jolly Ranchers and maybe some Jolly Rancher shots as well, because this one is just going to take a loop around the amusement park until it lands in the in the Hall of Doom. This one is far from over. I'm glad that I saw some really kind comments on Twitter, on Instagram, and on the channel overnight. And there's people who this morning said, LA, you look really tired. I wasn't tired. I was really pissed. And when I'm pissed and I want to rant, but I said, don't rant. Dude, don't rant. It's 8:30 in the morning. No one wants to hear someone ranting in the morning show. And you're just pissed as hell. So I was just like, it's like that scene in The Incredible Hulk where you're like, oh, don't make me mad. I'm about to break through my shirt. That's how I felt when I recorded this morning. The good part is there is good news. There is a good path. If you're one of those people that, on a personal note, that wants to say good news is only when you get what you need and you don't care about anyone else, I'm not the channel for you. There are viewers who are facing eviction at this very moment. They're sending me their eviction notices. I am, desecrated every time I see it. And when the president says he's going to issue an eviction moratorium that would stop that, that's not good news. That's incredibly great news. And for any viewer who jumps in the comments and says, I don't care about them, I care about this. That's not the spirit of this channel. We all have problems, and we all understand each other's problems. I had a viewer last week who couldn't put her son to couldn't bury her son. She had no money for his burial. I had a viewer last night who sent me a message, says, I have no money to pay food for my kids. I saw another comment this morning about the same thing. Everyone is hurting in different regards, and it doesn't work right to say that that relief for one person is bad because it's not relief for you. Ultimately, we're here as a team. We're here to get through this together. This is turning a course. We're going to get through it. And I ask you to join me later as we go to FPUC, which is really going to be FPUC is going to be a very fascinating video coming up shortly. And after that, rent assistance later tonight, LA late evening starting at 6:45 Pacific Standard Time of a 1-hour show. As always, stay motivated, stay smiling, stay focused, and stay positive, and save LA for more.